In this lesson, we'll only need to use a handful of tools. First off, we'll be using a selection quite a bit. Depending upon what mode you are in, will determine what elements you are selecting. If I'm in edges, for example, and I mouse and drag over some edges, that selects those edges, of course. If I'm in polygon mode and I mouse over, it pre-highlights the polygons that I want to select. Just click the mouse and hold and drag the mouse around to paint select multiple polygons, and the same with vertices. If I want to select something that's might be a little tricky or something behind, for example, if I want to select this edge here, but I'm viewing it from an odd angle, I can always use a lasso selection, and that will select through to that particular edge or component, depending upon what component mode I'm in. All right, so so lasso selection we'll use quite a bit. Also, we'll be using the scaling feature here, scale, and the move tool, which is the W key, and scale, of course, is R, the R key. All right. Along with that, we'll be using edge slide to work on some of this model. So if I go over to my edges, and the edge slide tool is right there, or it just simply hit the S key, and that will invoke that tool. And I click and drag in the viewport to move or slide that edge along those polygon contours. Okay. We'll also be using add loop, which is, I'm going to drop this tool here. I'm going to be using the add loop, which is right there. I mouse over an edge and it pre-highlights the polygon loop there that it will cut, and if I just click on that edge there, it allows me to place, by dragging the mouse, I can place that edge wherever I want along that perpendicular edge there. So that's another tool we'll be using. Let's see, how about the subdivide tool? Before I get to that, let's go to this edit tool right here, which is the polygon slice. It's another way of cutting through your model, and this will give us a straighter edge cut there. If I do that, and you can see it sliced a nice edge through the entire model. We'll also be using the subdivide tool, and that is the Shift D if you're in a component mode, Shift D, and you can subdivide your model, either faceted or Catmull Clark. Those are the two that we'll be using. If I click faceted mode, you see it just divides every polygon in half in both directions. The other tool we'll be using is the element move tool. This is one of my favorite tools of all time. Let's go over to the deform toolbox here, right at the very top. And I don't have to have anything selected. I can just mouse over a particular element and move it. Click and drag that element. So that's a really good way to nudge individual elements, and it works with vertices, it works with polygons, and it works with edges. All right. And of course, if I right click my mouse anywhere in the viewport and drag it to the right, it increases the influence of that tool. So I can grab a whole bunch of polygons at the same time. It's very intuitive and very easy to use. Similar to that will be the element push, and that does the same thing. I can increase or decrease the amount of influence that has, but if I bring it all the way down to 0, it'll only affect that particular element that I'm over the top of here. So if I click on that, you notice how it moves that selected element perpendicular to its plane here. So if let's try this polygon right here. You can see how it moves that polygon in that direction. I'm going to increase the influence. Let's go down here and let's move that out. You can see how that works. So yeah, it's a very, very cool and very intuitive tool. Another one similar to that is push. And in this case, you do have to have some elements or multiple elements or a single element selected. You click on the push tool and then click and drag, and that limits the push to just those particular elements. So as you can see, it is moving those elements perpendicular to the plane of the surface normals that they are resting on. So those are the only tools we'll be using to build this model, and it should be quite easy. And let's get started.